All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you to the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they work in your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
Oh my God, y'all. Welcome back. It's been a hot minute since ASAP Recap has been here. I haven't seen this guy in a little bit. I've seen him on the morning show. I just haven't seen him, on the same show. Dustin, how are we doing today?
I'm alive. I'm back. Just a little bit of a hiatus, but I'm here.
My God, this is crazy. I know we haven't had one of these in a couple of weeks now, but we're back. ASAP Recap is back. And I don't think we could have picked a better week to get back because Siri over here, stat guy, he's got to explain a whole situation. He's got to break it down in the way only Siri or stat guy could do. The MLB has a lockout. And I'm going to let Dustin explain it, but we saw the press conference done by the commissioner. We had a group of 8 people outside the MLB headquarters expressing their distaste for the decision and distaste for what the commissioner side is doing. Dustin, explain what's going on with the MLB to the people.
Well, everyone knows that the first week and a half, first 2 weeks of spring training were already delayed. And then after the February 28th / March 1st deadline, because they got a 12-hour extension because apparently talks were going well enough on February 28th to give them a day extension, they couldn't reach the deal before the deadline. So now the first 2 series of the year are guaranteed to be canceled. And now we're getting to the point where how many more games are going to get canceled and at what point do we see baseball this year, if at all. There's been a lot of chatter the last couple of years that the MLB owners already feel that the season is too long at 162 games as it is. So now you have a lot of the players and a lot of the players' union kind of doing a little bit of pushback, basically saying the owners got what they wanted and basically saying they never wanted the season to start on time anyways. So by doing what they did and guaranteeing that they canceled the first 2 weeks of the season, it kind of puts the owners in the spot that they wanted to be all along, where they're trying to get rid of these April games and start the season right away in May, and then just run it May through September and go from 162 games down to 140. And Jason Hayward put it perfectly. A lot of the owners view these April games as debt. They don't even view them as regular games because you look at how Chicago and Boston and New York and all these northern climates are in the month of April and how bad the weather can get and how cold the weather can get. You very rarely have sellout crowds in April. So teams are not getting the amount of revenue that they typically could, which is why a lot of the owners view April games as debt because it's costing them more to put the product on the field in April as it is to what they're going to bring in.
And that was really interesting for me to find out because when I read that about how the MLB owners want to shorten the season, it felt kind of opposite to what we see in the NFL, really, where we see players kind of pushing for less games and the owners kind of pushing for 17, now talks of like 18 games or things like that. And, to find that flip, I was perplexed at first. I said, this doesn't really make sense. Wouldn't you just make more money? And then you go on. And as Dustin explained, they view it as debt in April. So, Dustin, do you think we're going to have baseball in 2022?
I mean, we're going to have baseball because college baseball is going on right now, and the first official day of minor league spring training is tomorrow. So we're going to have baseball in some aspect. It's just a matter of do we get Major League Baseball or not. I think we do at some point, but it's not going to come, in my opinion, until we get to like July or maybe even the end of June at the earliest. And I don't see it being more than 80 games at this point just because no one can agree on anything. The players want something, the owners want something, but they cannot meet in the middle. And realistically, as weird as this sounds, this could be the greatest thing that ever happened to minor league baseball. And the reason why I say that is minor league baseball has always been complaining about the money side of things, where they're not paid enough money. Their players have to basically work 2 or 3 jobs just to afford a living. And a lot of these minor league teams play in really small cities where a good chunk of their yearly revenue comes from baseball season when people come to the ballpark, stay at the hotels, and just kind of be in that city. Without Major League Baseball, minor league attendance is going to go way up because fans are going to want to watch baseball in some regard. And as long as there is like a semi-professional product on the field, which minor league baseball is professional baseball, but it's not like the major leagues, fans are going to show up. And now you're going to have minor league parks are going to start to get the attendance back because people are going to have the itch to watch baseball. And a lot of these towns that rely on the money generated from the minor league season, they're going to make out very well this year because they're going to probably have more attendance than they've had in a long time.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking of as well, is kind of when the NFL had their lockout, right? You were talking about strike players and things like that. And I was thinking the MLB can't really have strike players because I'm not sure if you can move the minor league players up just like that within the course of a couple of days. I'm not sure how that process would work. But I was thinking right away, minor league baseball would get a huge bump because, again, that audience is still going to be craving for pro baseball. They're not just going to be satisfied sitting and not watching it. So they're going to want some form of it. Just like if the NFL were to have a lockout, even though none of us think the XFL are going to be a great product, or the USFL would be the greatest product with Shea Patterson being the first overall draft pick there, we're still going to watch it because we know that's the only football we're going to get. Minor league baseball is going to get a shoot in ratings that it hasn't seen in a long time. Again, I was on the same page. I think summertime is when we could expect Major League Baseball to get back around the July point, just because, like you said, no one can agree on anything. And it feels like they're just not going to communicate for a little bit. They're going to spend a month or two apart and then come back together and see what they can do, because the owners in the long run are going to be losing a heck of a lot more money. They don't want the debt to go into the summertime where they make the stuff back. And the players, I'm sure, want to keep playing. I don't think they want to go to Tokyo, even though was it Bryce Harper that put out the tweet about getting him one of those jerseys out in Japan?
Yeah, the funny thing was I wrote a column on this for a website the other day where you have like all these unsigned free agents like Trevor Story, Kenley Jansen, Carlos Correa, and things like that. Since they can't even talk to a major league team right now because of the lockout, you have to wonder how long these players are going to sit unsigned, or if they're just going to be willing to take a 1-year, $4 million deal to go play in Korea or go play in Japan just so they can play some form of competitive baseball. And if that's the case, are you going to see more players follow from the States to go overseas? And again, that's another kill to Major League Baseball because a lot of their stars that are going to generate the ratings and their revenue might choose to leave overseas just because they're guaranteed to play this year, as opposed to nobody knows what's going to happen with Major League Baseball at this point.
Yeah, and I think the longer this goes on, the more it hurts the owners, because I think the more you go, you lose more money, you lose more leverage if you're the owners, because again, you're starting to need that money source to come in. And the players, they have another option. It's not you're not going to get your big time $500 million deals or $20 million deals, but you have an option at least for a year to go make yourself a couple $1 million playing in a league that you can dominate it. And then you can call suit for more guys to go over there. I think if you're the owners, you're trying to get this done as early as you can, but I just don't think they have the foresight right now to see what is to come from these MLB players.
And the most disturbing part of the whole thing is this isn't something that just popped up out of nowhere.
Yep.
We've been hearing this going back to 2018 that neither one of these sides was really happy with the current collective bargaining agreement that was in place. And that once the bargaining agreement expired in 2021, that a lot of people thought there was going to be a threatening of a lockout, but not an actual lockout. And the fact that this has been going on now for 4 years, you would have thought that some sort of discussions would have been had the last couple of years to at least kind of have the parameters put in place for when we got to the point of, well, the CBA expires in like 60 days, but this is what we've kind of laid out over the last 3 years. What can we agree on? What do we need to change? So something could have been put in place. It's like they didn't even want to talk for 3 years. And then when it gets time to talking, then they get further and further apart to the point where we are right now.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing. It's kind of something you see out of a comedy TV show, right? They have a problem and they said, you know who should deal with it? Future you and future me. And that's just what it felt like the MLB kept doing, because like you said, this is not something new. They, I think, were able to buy themselves a year because of COVID. They didn't have to worry about a lot of it for at least a couple months.
Ironically, though, what you just said is why I think COVID would have helped this. Because nobody was playing baseball for 3.5 months during COVID. What was anybody doing during that time? They were at 100%. Home working out and doing all this other stuff. You couldn't do anything. Why wasn't there Zoom meetings with the Players Association and the owners during this 3-month time? Because nothing was going on. That would have been the perfect time to get everything set up for where we are right now.
I 100% agree with you. I was just about to get there. You had the opportunity. Again, if the first month of COVID, you have no idea to do it. But then Zoom is there, Skype is there, everything is there. You could have had at least the beginnings of the talk. So 2 years from that point, like we're almost 2 years from the beginning of the pandemic, just in 7 days. In a week's time, no, not a little over a week's time. We'll be 2 years from the beginning of this pandemic in terms of in the United States and the lockdown. Okay, well, you had 2 years really, or at least 3 months from this point where you had an opportunity to just talk. And then you could have had those talks last 2 years and we would not be in the position you are. And now the owners are going to end up losing a whole bunch of money because they just could not get on their horse and say, we need to talk about this and we need to figure it out.
And that's why I've always said from the beginning of this whole situation that for the first time in baseball history, the players had the advantage and the players had the leverage over the owners, because you have Rob Manfred, who's the commissioner of Major League Baseball, sitting here saying baseball's in such a tough place right now. We're losing so much money, and we have been over the last 5 years. And then there's a report come out that over the last 5 years, baseball's made $43 billion in profit, which comes out to basically $1.4 billion per franchise, give or take, depending on like if a franchise does good or bad. But if you're making $43 billion in profit the last 5 years, you're not short on money and you're not losing money. It's the fact that you don't want to give players more of that revenue share because they're the ones that are getting you the kind of revenue you're getting.
It's just a whole sticky situation. And again, I think Dustin and I are in agreement that it probably is going to last up until the summertime. And the longer it lasts, the less the MLB is going to like it. And the more the players are going to get something going their way. It'll be an interesting take for my Major League Baseball, and I think minor league baseball, as Dustin brought up, is going to be affected in a big way and probably in a positive way through the end of all this. But moving into, we talked college baseball will still be on. Well, right now, college basketball is going on, and we know it's March, so March Madness coming up, almost tournament time, I'm sure. We got some bracketology leagues getting through on plenty of the apps. But we want to talk about last Saturday. This is ASAP recap, so we recap things. Last Saturday was a historic day for college basketball. 7 of the top 10 teams go down in one day. That's not something you hear every day, especially in college basketball in regular season play. Now, this isn't like the tournament. This is regular season. 7 go down in one day. Dustin.
All the top 6.
All the top 6. Which team to you had the most disappointing loss, or which team had the most impressive win?
It's going to fall. The same game as the most disappointing loss and the most impressive win. So I'll kind of take it 6 through 1, and I'll save the most impressive one for the last.
All right.
You had number 6 losing. I believe number 6, if I remember right, was Kentucky.
Yes.
They are number 6 in the country. They lost on the road to a number 18 team.
Yep.
Okay, you lost on the road against a ranked opponent. No one's going to hold that against you. Then you had a team in Kansas who was number 4, losing on the road at number 10 Baylor. Again, no one's going to hold that. Yeah, number 5 Kansas. Yeah, losing at number 10 Baylor. Again, no one's going to hold that against you. You're on the road against a ranked opponent. Purdue was number 4 in the country. Lost at Michigan State. Michigan State may not be ranked, but it's still Michigan State. Michigan State is still a very tough place to play for any team, and they lost on basically a last-second three-pointer, so you're not going to hold that one against them.
Yep.
Number 3, Auburn lost at number 17, Tennessee. Again, ranked team playing on the road against a ranked opponent. No one's going to hold that against you. Number 1, Gonzaga loses at number 23, St. Mary's, which a lot of people are going to look at that and be like, well, that's a bad loss. Well, look at how history is in that conference. The only team that can actually beat Gonzaga is St. Mary's. And when they do it, it's usually at St. Mary's. So, I mean, you really can't say much about that. The only loss that was really a bad loss and an impressive loss at the same time was number 2, Arizona, losing to unranked Colorado. It was the 3rd time in Colorado program history that they beat a top 5 opponent. The first time they've ever done it at home, and it was only the 2nd time they've ever beaten a ranked Arizona team. But if you look at the rest of the losses for all those top 6 teams, they were all by single digits. Colorado won that game by 17 points. Like, Arizona had no chance at even making a comeback in that game, and Colorado dominated that game pretty much start to finish outside maybe the first 10 minutes.
Yep.
That was a very bad loss for Arizona because they had a chance to move to number 1 in the country with a win. They were undefeated in Pac-12 play. They were clearly the class of the Pac-12, and they had the driver's seat opening up for them to overtake that number 1 ranking. And on the flip side, Colorado may have just punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament with that win. Regardless of what happens to them the rest of the season, as long as they can win 1, maybe 2 games in that conference tournament, you can circle this game against Arizona and be like, well, that's the game that got them into the tournament because they didn't just beat Arizona. They beat them bad.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm right with you. This is the worst loss to me by far. I know that Gonzaga loses to St. Mary by 10, but that's just history. St. Mary usually beats Gonzaga at St. Mary. But Colorado held Arizona scoreless in the first half for 4 minutes, from the 13-minute mark to the 9-minute mark, and then again in the second half for 5 minutes, from the 11-minute mark to the 6-minute mark. As the number 2 team in the nation, if an unranked team holds you scoreless for a total of 9 minutes through a game, what are you doing? Like, 9 minutes you could not score, and it's not like you shot up from that point. You kind of just kept chugging along, and outside of the first 10 minutes of this game, it was all Colorado, defensively, offensively, and it looked like Arizona just either didn't want to win it or could not get anything to work for them. I didn't understand how this team that before that game, I thought looked pretty decent. I thought it had a decent chance to at least make some noise in the tournament, played like one of the better teams in the nation. And then here, they just completely fall apart.
It's one of those classic cases where I think Arizona was looking past their opponent.
Yeah.
Where they basically just came in, were undefeated in conference play. This team's like a 500 team, so we shouldn't have any issues. And that 9-minute stretch that Arizona didn't score, the 4 in the first half and the 5 in the second half, Colorado was plus 15.
Yep.
In those 9 minutes. So you take away those 9 minutes, the remaining 31 minutes of the game, Colorado only outscored Arizona by 2 points. So any form of bucket within that 9-minute window, Arizona probably wins that game. It's just the fact that Arizona was dominated so bad within those 9 minutes that Colorado was able to build themselves a big enough buffer where it didn't matter what Arizona did the rest of the way.
It's truly just unbelievable how it works. And it's not like Colorado had one guy just killing you. You know, sometimes in college basketball, one guy just takes it over. Their highest scorer was Tristan da Silva, and he had 19 points, if I'm remembering correctly. And he had 19 points. So it's not like he was murdering you from the line. It wasn't botting you inside. It was a total team effort. There wasn't one guy going all in, going all out. It was like the best recruit in the nation. It's not like Zion Williamson for Duke a couple years ago where he just took over the game and there's nothing you could do because he's bigger, stronger, faster. Arizona just got beat from every single possible angle here, and it's a really bad look for Arizona, especially when you said they could have jumped to the number 1 team in the nation. They could have easily punched a ticket, or at least been that team. It's like they are hands down that team right now in the NCAA after that Gonzaga loss, and they just choked it away.
And I don't care what anybody says. The Pac-12 is stronger this year than what it has been in the past, but it's not going to be viewed as like one of the premier college basketball conferences in the country. But it's still a Power 5 conference. And if you go undefeated in a Power 5 conference, you pretty much automatically cement yourself a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, regardless of what happens to you in the conference tournament, because you literally went through the 18-game gauntlet of a regular season going unbeaten, and then all of a sudden you get stumbled in the conference tournament because you have a team fighting for their tournament lives, as opposed to you're pretty much set in stone where you're going to be. So you go undefeated in the Pac-12, you're going to guarantee yourself a number one seed in the tournament. Now you have a situation where Arizona is going to most likely get a number 2, but they could even fall to a number 3 because of all the teams that beat the teams ahead of them and behind them that are moving up in the rankings.
Again, Duke just beat Syracuse that same day by like almost 20 something points. They were number 7 in the nation, 27. They were number 7 in the nation at that point. And
now they jumped up to 4.
Exactly. So you talk about how much these things are changing. You are not getting any leeway here. You're not getting any room. Texas Tech was another team in the top 10 I don't think we brought up. They lost to TCU, but again, at TCU, it's a rival. It's not like it's just mind-boggling that on a day where you have 7 of the top 10 teams and then you're the worst loss when you didn't lose by the most. You had Gonzaga, or you did lose by the most. You're the worst loss of the group. Of the 7 top 10 teams that lost, you're the worst one. Just based off every situation. That is just a poor place to be at if you're Arizona.
And now that you brought them up, I want to ask you this quick, just because we're getting to the point of being at the end of an era, but this tomorrow is Coach K's last regular season game as a Duke head coach. It's his last game ever at Cameron Indoor Stadium. It's potentially his last game ever against North Carolina. So, I mean, if you're going to go out, that's the game you're going to want to go out at. You know that place is going to be rocking on Saturday. You know, just former players, everybody that's going to be there. It's going to be just an emotional roller coaster of a day for him. But looking even beyond that, and looking how Duke has played over the last 2 months now, they have the longest active winning streak away from home, surprisingly. They've won 9 consecutive road games, which is the longest streak in the country, which is something unheard of. Do you think this Duke team has what it takes to make it to the Final Four? And do you think, based off of how they're playing right now, they're kind of in the position where we want to win this for Coach K and send them out with another title?
That's what it feels like it is. I think when you look at how they started the season, they didn't look very good. You're like, Coach K might go out like in a subpar year for Coach K, where they're like a top 15 team. They get to the tournament, lose in like the second round, right? And for some guys,
I mean, the win over Gonzaga early in the year was a great win for them. But like you said, outside of that game, they really didn't play well up until we got to about mid-January.
Exactly. And then I think really what I saw the flip kind of switch, where I saw a really good team, was against Carolina. They just never let up. And from that point on, I've never seen them play better. And I know they had wins before that, but for me, it was that Carolina Duke game where they I think that's where you kind of felt that this is Coach K's last year. I think before that, there was never really that feeling. But then when they say this is his last game going to the Dean Dome, right, one of his heroes in coaching and Dean Smith, I think at that point, the players kind of felt, hey, this is it for Coach. We're going to go and make sure we win everything. We got to put everything on the floor. And if they continue to play like this, they can win the whole thing. If they play like this, if these 2 months are what they continue to do, they're the best team in the country. But again, we've seen the weaknesses. We know they're there. But when they play the way they have been playing for the last 2 months, when they can be beaten on the road, they don't turn it over. They convert. They take good shots. They're very efficient. They can beat anybody in the country.
And the thing was, too early in the year, they didn't have A.J. Griffin.
Yep.
They had him, but they didn't have him. A.J. Griffin was coming back from a knee injury and really didn't solidify his role until mid-January. And then Trevor Keels goes down with an ankle injury for around 4 or 5 games, and Griffin steps into the starting lineup, and he hasn't left since. And that's another X factor that if he would have been healthy all year, who knows where this Duke team would be. They have 4 losses on the season, and 3 of them were before mid-January. The only one since January 23rd was that buzzer beater against Virginia.
Yep.
But take that away, this Duke team easily could be probably the number 1 team in the country if Griffin was healthy all year.
Again, I think Duke fans are hoping that Coach K goes out with a bang, goes out with one more, because I think for a lot of us, he's probably the greatest college basketball head coach that we've ever seen. I know Dean Smith is in that conversation. There's a couple other guys, but at least for me, I think he might be the greatest one. And I know all of my UNC brethren and pupils are going to hate that I just admitted that. But you got to give credit where credit's due sometimes. You can't be a hater all the time. Again, 7 of the top 10 teams fall in one day. Duke doesn't fall. Go ahead, Dustin.
And this is one of those situations, too, and I said this on the morning show a week or so, maybe even 2 weeks ago. In my opinion, the best college basketball team, take away the Fab Five, because the Fab Five at least got to the national championship in the Final Four, but the best college basketball team not even to get to the Final Four was that Duke team that had Cam Reddish, R.J. Barrett, and Zion Williamson, where for whatever reason, Coach K took the ball out of Zion's hands the final 4 minutes of the game against Michigan State when Michigan State had no answers for him. And I think that still hurts to this day, knowing that all we had to do was just keep feeding him the ball and we would have won that game. So this, in my opinion, is kind of like the makeup for that. This team is not as talented as that team was. Obviously, Paolo Banchero's good, and he's going to be a top 5 pick. But outside of that, you're not going to have 3 top 5 picks like that Duke roster had.
No.
But if they can win the national title with this roster, it's kind of the makeup for that year when he had all the pieces in place that year, but just couldn't finish it.
Yeah, it's kind of, for me, I've compared to like the 2011 Patriots team to the 2014 Patriots team. 2011 was, I think, much more talented, but then 2014, they were able to get it done with a little bit less. They kind of made up for a loss they shouldn't have really had. And again, I think that's a perfect example from you, Dustin, of they didn't get it done with the most talented team that didn't make the Final Four. Or did they got to the Elite Eight?
No, they lost in the Elite Eight. That was the most talented team, in my opinion, that it couldn't even get to the Final Four.
And that's the craziest thing about, again, you talk about Zion, you talk about RJ, and you talk about Cam, and Cam Reddish was nowhere to be found in that entire run. I was like, where's the top 5 pick here? But man, if that team had the talent to go and do it, but if this team goes and does it, I think for Coach K, he'll feel good. He said, look, I got that one off my chest, and I was able to go out with a bang. All right, we're going to take just a quick break, and we'll be back in a little bit.
Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. We on top of our game. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays.
All right, welcome back. So we just finished talking about college basketball, and we talked about how, Coach K's last game at Cameron Indoor and the 7 teams in the top 10 who lost last Saturday, and I'm sure we'll have something to recap in college basketball come next Friday. But I want to start off now talking about college quarterbacks because we saw the NFL scouting combine come out yesterday. For a brief moment, we thought that John Ross's 40-yard dash record was in jeopardy. It is not. The official times come back. He ran a 4.28, I believe Tyquan Thornton did. But the combine is really, we look at the quarterbacks a lot, right? We talk about them. And I'm going to start off with this. I think that the combine does nothing for top prospects. To be honest, it tells me nothing more. I think the pro days are more valuable than the combine. I don't think the pro days are very valuable. Dustin, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the position.
I'm talking about for quarterback specifically.
Yeah, quarterback specifically, no. To me, the only position the combine helps is offensive lineman and defensive lineman because it allows them to show their strength on the bench press and things like that, and their agility with like the board jumps and the cone drills and things like that that you really can't see during a regular game just because you're not doing that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, like running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, defensive backs, quarterbacks, and a lot of the skill positions, combine does nothing for him because you're in a controlled environment and people are telling you like exactly what routes to run, exactly what passes to throw, exactly kind of what drills to do because every single player in that same position is going to do the same drills. Versus when you get to the pro day, you're running a lot of the college offenses that you just ran in college. But there's NFL coaches that show up to these pro days, and these NFL coaches actually tell some of these players, hey, I want you to try this. Hey, I want you to try that. So they're actually getting some NFL input while they're doing NFL things in front of NFL eyes.
Yeah, and really, I think for people who take the combine so seriously, I couldn't. People were talking about Carson Strong, right? And he had a couple really nice deep balls, and people say, "Oh man, after this combine, is Carson Strong a first-round pick?" I said, "How did he jump from a fourth-round grade to a first-round grade through 2 deep balls that he threw?" Yeah,
I mean, how did Jordan Love jump in the 3rd round?
That's a great question again, but people don't want to learn from him.
He had a good combine.
Yeah, he had a good combine.
That's right.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, you could throw well with shorts on. Congratulations. You did well against air. I mean, you should be 100% against air. Again, for me, if you're a quarterback, you're supposed to just go in there and throw it as far as you can. Like RG3, I remember hearing a soundbite. He said, "Whatever you do, overthrow the receiver. Don't underthrow. If you're gonna miss long." Because that's all it is. It's just how far can you throw the ball. Okay, Carson Strong can throw it all the way down the field, but can he be a good quarterback? The tape doesn't tell you that, and the combine's not telling you that either.
Or he could be like Josh Allen and get down on one knee and throw the ball 80 yards on one knee.
There you go. Herbert flat-footed from his goal line, throwing it 60 yards. Whatever the case is, again, I think that when we look at the combine, we put so much into it because it's televised. Oh, we want to feel like we have any control. We have no control. We have no idea based off this. Again, the combine is just cool because you want to see how fast the 40-yard dash is. You want to see who can run the fastest 40-yard dash. I don't think people can name 3 drills outside the 40 in the combine. If we're being complete, there's not like, I'm sure if you watch it, you read scouting reports, you know. But most normal people probably couldn't tell you what 3 drills are. They don't matter. It's not an important feat for me. No. If you skip the combine, I don't think it affects your draft grade. Like Matt Corral not being in the combine did nothing that affects his draft grade. Now, again, his knee, will it be healthy? That's something else. But if Malik Willis said, I'm not going to the combine. It doesn't do anything for him. He didn't lose anything. He's still going to be a first-round pick.
Yep.
It's just I think everyone slow down. Listen to Aaron. The one time I'll tell you to listen to Aaron Rodgers is when we say relax, because 5 letters, RELAX, relax. That's it. Just make sure the results a little bit better than what the Packers had 2014, where they blew a double-digit lead to Seattle in the NFC Championship game, the first of many.
Yeah,
first of many.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing the combine actually does help, and you might agree, you might not agree, is I think the combine helps players from like Division II, Division III, or like those FCS schools that don't get the national spotlight or the national recognition that the FBS does.
Mm-hmm.
Because unless you literally watch the FCS on a regular basis, how many people knew how good Carson Wentz was? How many people knew how good Trey Lance was? A lot of people didn't find out how good Carson Wentz was in the combine. Yep. A lot of people knew nothing about Trey Lance until his pro days. Like, schools like that and players that come from schools like that, I think, benefit from the combine, because this is the first time they get a chance to be on that national stage and show what they can do, even though it's not at like a game level. It still gives them a chance to get in front of like the national audience and showcase the talent that only local audiences can see.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the combine doesn't have no value, but like you said, I think for guys who you don't see a lot of, if you get to see, Trey Lance just throw the ball, you say, whoa, this kid's something different. Maybe I need to go to his, thing. Or if Carson Wentz when he was throwing the ball, you saw the physical tools. Yeah, it's great for the small school guys. Again, I'm just sitting here in the point of view, if you're playing at a D1 school, I don't really think you need the NFL combine. Again, Carson Strong's going to get a lot more looks now because he could throw the ball down the field. But to me, it doesn't tell me he's going to be any better of a quarterback than what the tape did this entire season. But speaking of the NFL, there's a team with the quarterback. They're not drafting a quarterback, but somehow they're going to diminish or deplenish his wide receiver room. The Dallas Cowboys are likely to release Amari Cooper. Wow. Remember when Stephen A. Smith says some way, somehow the Cowboys will let you down? This is literally the actualization of that quote. Dustin, talk to me. What Amari Cooper, should he be released? And then if they release him, what do you think it does for the Cowboys?
I don't know what Dallas is thinking at this point. I mean, obviously, CeeDee Lamb is going to be their number one receiver of the future, and he's only going to be in his third year this year, so you're not going to move on from him. Cedric Wilson was your number 4 receiver last year, who took 4 years to finally do something, so I don't see you bringing him back. And Michael Gallup is coming off of an injury, so at this point, it basically says that the Cowboys are committing to CeeDee Lamb, obviously, and then Michael Gallup. And if you think Michael Gallup is better than Amari Cooper, I don't know what football you watch, because Amari Cooper was good with the Raiders before he got to Dallas, and he's been very good and very consistent since he got to Dallas. Losing Cooper is not just losing a receiver. You're losing a number 1 Pro Bowl caliber receiver who's going to give you 100 catches, 1,000 yards, and 10 plus touchdowns every single year for the most part. And Dak Prescott puts up good numbers. You can't take that away from him, but he doesn't put up elite numbers, and he doesn't put up like all pro numbers every single year. And losing a guy like Cooper is going to hurt Prescott, especially if they can't retain Michael Gallup, who's also a free agent. So now not only did you lose Cooper, but you could lose Michael Gallup. So your option at wide receiver would be CeeDee Lamb and nobody until you find somebody else. And that alone is going to hurt Dallas in a big way.
Yeah, and you talk about Dak Prescott. He is statistically much better with Amari Cooper. We talk about with Amari Cooper, he's 28-16. Without, he's 3-6, right? Since Amari got there. You talk about the team's points per game, it's 8 points higher with Amari Cooper. The completion percentage for Dak Prescott, 5 points higher, 5 percentage points higher. Passing yards, you have about 70 yards more per game. Passer rating, 20 clicks better. Again, Jason McMinn, he goes out there and says he's not better, but will be cheaper. I'm assuming he's talking about Michael Gallup compared to Amari Cooper. Yeah, but
could be not good enough to carry. Could Dallas be doing this though? Since he's scheduled to make $22 million, I think it is. Maybe it's $20 million.
$20 million.
Could Dallas be doing this just to get that salary off of the books, and then just turn around and sign him for like a 4 or a 5 year deal for less annual money?
Well, Again, I feel you don't have to release him. Can't you just restructure in a way, extend him, and make you don't have to make the say you're going to likely release the guy. I feel like they're planning to just release him, and I'm with you. Just you know that Michael Gallup doesn't have a big of an impact as Amari Cooper does, and Dak Prescott's not good enough of a quarterback to lead with just C receivers. I'm sorry, Cowboys fans. I hate to break it to you. You paid a guy $70 million in his first year to not be good enough to lead C+ receivers. And that's what he's going to have to deal with. I know CeeDee Lamb, you have to save money for him, but they did this because they're in a contract. They have no money because they're tied up to Zeke Elliott. They're tied up so much to Dak Prescott. They know they're going to have to pay CeeDee Lamb big time money. They say, who's going to be cheaper, Michael Gallup or Amari Cooper? And to Jason's point, Michael Gallup will be cheaper. But guess what, Cowboys? You're going to be much, much worse without Amari Cooper.
And I guess if Cooper is basically released, he becomes a free agent for the taking. Who do you see him going to? There's a couple teams that I have in mind, but who do you think he ends up with?
Oh man, he could be anywhere. And again, if you talk about teams that just love to plenish that receiver, Kansas City, I'm sure would take a look at him. I'm not who can afford him would be a different question. How much money does he make? I think the Patriots would love to go get a number one receiver for Mac Jones. I think the Bills would love to get another receiver for. I think he would go back to the AFC. To be honest with you, I think he'd go or Green Bay. I think Green Bay or Seattle in the NFC. He would just stick because you're trying to entice your quarterback to stay. And if he's willing to come for a little bit less money, you could go in there and say, hey, look, Aaron. Hey, look, Russ. We got another receiver for you.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. The only team that I see him going to in the NFC, ironically, is the Chicago Bears, just because they're going to try to replace Allen Robinson. And why not replace Allen Robinson with Amari Cooper? Even if it's only a 3-year deal, it still gives you that first number one option you've had since Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey.
Yep.
But the team that I think is most likely to take a swing at him is the Miami Dolphins because of their salary cap situation. They have the most money to spend of any team this offseason. They can afford to, I'm not going to say overpay for Cooper because he is going to get his money, but they can afford to outbid anybody else for his services because they have the most money to give out.
How about Jacksonville? I think Jacksonville will be another interesting team to throw out there. Get Trevor Lawrence, an actual receiver to throw to this year. Try to give him some help.
Yeah, Jacksonville's intriguing. Another one, but I think in Cooper's situation, yes, it's about the money, but I think he also wants to go to a situation where he knows he has a shot to win.
Yep.
Miami was 9-8 last year. They just missed the playoffs by one game after starting 1-7. Plus, they have the most financial flexibility of anybody. So that right there, regardless of what's happened with Brian Flores and Stephen Ross and everything that's happened with that team last month, that situation is still a good situation with the amount of cap space they have, how close they were to making the playoffs last year. You add one or two quality pieces to that mix, and you are a playoff team that can do damage.
Yep.
The Bears are the Bears. I mean, they were 6-11 last year, but Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace were the biggest issues, and now that both of them are gone, Chicago still has talent to at least be a playoff contending team. They might not have the talent to be a Super Bowl contending team, but they have the talent to get into the postseason.
And when Matt Nagy wasn't calling plays, Justin Fields played well, right? Like we saw him play well when Matt Nagy wasn't calling. So now you get a full season of that. It could be really exciting.
Yeah, like you said, Jacksonville has plenty of money too, but they're not one of these teams that was like 6, 7, 8 wins. They were 4-12 or 4-13, whatever they were. And even with all that money, they're still a couple of years away. And I don't see Cooper going somewhere where the first half of the contract he signs is going to be a losing season because he's not going to get any younger at that point.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think Baltimore would be another interesting name to throw out there just because you want to see what Lamar Jackson could do with an actual number one receiver. We can have our debates about Hollywood Brown all we want to, but he's not Amari Cooper. So that would be another team. Again,
I mean, who knows if Hollywood Brown's going to be there?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think I'm with you on the fact that Amari Cooper, I don't think wants to go somewhere just to get big money and then not be a part of a winning team. He wants to say, hey, look, you made a big mistake. I'm going to go win somewhere without you. He wants to pull like the OBJ kind of deal. It's like, okay, you want to get rid of me? Sure, do that. But I'm going to go win some games. I'm going to be in the playoffs. I'm going to be somewhere where you aren't in this season, like OBJ did with the Rams versus the Browns. Right? I think that's the kind of mold he's going to try to follow. So, what we're going to finish off talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, continue. You got it. Can you hear me, Dustin?
you broke up for a second. I didn't hear what you caught.
Oh, no, you go ahead. Go ahead. You were going to say something. Just go ahead.
No, I said, yeah, I was just going to say, like, Cooper's kind of found himself in the same situation twice. He was the Raiders' go-to receiver for 3.5 years. The Raiders were a playoff contending team when he was there, and then it just got to the point where they had one bad year and they had to cut ties because of his financial burden it was going to carry. And then he goes to Dallas. He's their top option for 2.5 years. They draft CeeDee Lamb. Dallas is a playoff contending team, and the same situation's happening. It gets to the point where he's too much financially for the team to take on, and they got to get rid of him. So he's run into the same situation twice, one time in each league.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for him, he'd probably have to go and get a little bit less money to go play somewhere where he can actually win. I think he's got to learn from the fact that, okay, I made my money. You know what? Maybe just take a little bit less instead of 20, maybe 15, cut it down. Still be a number one guy, or a number two guy even, but still have a chance to win.
Yep.
All right, so what we're going to do is talk about a guy who does not want chances to win. He does not like winning. He is not a winner. I'm sorry, all Lakers fans. Try to tell you that when you traded for him. I thought LA had the best and worst trade last year. I thought they had the best trade for Matthew Stafford and the worst trade in Russell Westbrook. And now we're going to talk about the best trade that will happen for the Los Angeles Lakers in 2022. We'll be getting Russell Westbrook out of there because Russell Westbrook has asked the front office for a trade this summer in the offseason, or at least that is the report or the rumor. Russ, I hate to break it to you. They were doing it whether you asked for it or not. You were going to get traded, my guy. I'm sorry.
I hate to break it to you. I hate to break it to Russell Westbrook too, but now the fact that he's come out and said that he wants to do it, there's going to be Los Angeles Laker fans lining up in his front yard to help him pack.
Absolutely. He doesn't have to pay people to go pack. They'll volunteer. There'll be a bunch of high school kids ready to get some volunteer hours, be part of the Key Club, and go ahead and help him out there because no one wants Russell Westbrook in LA. You know who wants Russell Westbrook in LA? The other 29 teams in the NBA, because they said as long as Russell's there, they ain't winning. Michael Jordan wants Russell Westbrook in LA because he knows as long as Russ is there, LeBron ain't catching me in rings. I promise you that much. He ain't getting a 6 with Russell Westbrook in town. Look, Russell, you have not been good since you've got there. You've not gotten better. You just don't know how to function. Here's what's going to happen in my eyes to Russell Westbrook. He will get traded to OKC for a salary dump. He will get kind of like a final tour. He'll get to go back home and back to the heyday and kind of finish out his days in OKC, telling the stories of how he once played with Kevin Durant and James Harden and got to an NBA Finals. Kind of like that old man's like, back in my day, Sonny, I go into the finals with old Kevin Durant and James Harden. That's what, in my eyes, that's what's happening with Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, you might disagree with me when I say this, but on paper, the Russell Westbrook trade actually didn't look that bad at first, just because he is a former NBA MVP. He is an all-star caliber player who puts up triple-double numbers. The only thing was he just could never win consistently wherever he's been. I mean, the best team he's had was the James Harden, Kevin Durant days in Oklahoma City. He came close to winning, but he lost in the NBA Finals. And since then, he's lost James Harden. He's lost Kevin Durant. He's lost Steven Adams. I mean, he's lost everybody that he's had from that Oklahoma City group. And it just seems like once those players started to leave Oklahoma City, Russell Westbrook's mental stability also went with it. It just doesn't seem like he knows how to function on his own and that he always needs one or two superstars around him to make him look better than what he really is.
Yeah, and like on paper, again, I said this from day one. I said on paper, yeah, he scores your triple-double and he'll have, the nice pretty 20 and then fall by 2 10s and it'll look, wow, he's got to be a good player. But then you look at how many shots he's taken. You see he's taken 30 shots to put up 20 points. Say, well, that's not very great, especially when you consider that the points in the NBA are worth 2 points. It's 2 points. You take 30 of them to go ahead and get 20. It's just he's never been efficient enough. And I think a lot of people, even if they knew this about Russell Westbrook, thought he would be willing to adjust, because when you go to LeBron, it's like if you don't work with LeBron, it's kind of it for you. You know what I mean? If you're a veteran player, it's kind of like when you in the NFL, if you don't work with Tom Brady as a veteran player, you're not working anywhere else as a veteran player. That's just how it worked. So you were saying he's going to fix his game. He's going to work on it. People were telling me he's going to change. And I said, I will see it when I believe it, because they said that same thing when he went to Houston to go play with his best friend, James Harden. And what happened? A year later, he said, I want to trade. Then they said, oh, he's going to go play with Bradley Beal. He'll have another good guy to go out there and play with. Nothing happened. A year later, asked for a trade, goes to Los Angeles. People told me his game was going to adjust. Never happened. And a year later, he's going to ask for another trade. And again, he'll be back in OKC, I think. I think OKC is the only team that's really going to be willing to trade for the guy who costs that much money and is not going to lead to any success.
I don't even know if he ends up back in OKC, honestly.
I don't think the Lakers get anything back. I just think they take on the salary, and then Lakers give him $100 and say, okay, we'll move.
At this point, I don't even know if any team takes on his salary. I think he's got a better shot. I think he has a better shot of getting released with the Lakers taking the cap hit than he does getting traded, because I don't see anybody at this point that's going to trade for him. Because realistically, when you look at the rest of the league, whether you're a playoff team or not, what team really needs a point guard right now? Realistically, what team actually needs a point guard right now? That is, I should say, a starting caliber point guard.
Boston
won't take him, though.
No, we wouldn't take. Absolutely not. I just think the teams that need a point guard. But yeah,
I mean, the Wizards need one, but they just traded him from Washington, so they're not going to bring him back.
They'll have KCP run before they bring him back.
Yeah, the Rockets got Dennis Schroeder. They're not going to bring Russell Westbrook back, or they're not going to bring Russell Westbrook back to Houston. Nope. Oklahoma City has that Josh Giddey and that other young guy that's playing point guard. They're George Alexander. They're not going to bring him into OKC. There's really no teams in the league right now that need a starting caliber point guard. And Russell Westbrook's not going to go anywhere to not start. He's not going to go somewhere to be a bench player. He's not going to go somewhere to be a role player. If he goes anywhere, it's going to be a starter. And until somewhere opens up, the only team that you could argue might need one is the New York Knicks. But do they want to bring that circus to New York, knowing that they're already in the middle of a circus year right now as it is?
Yeah, no. The only reason I was saying OKC was just because that's where he started, give him like one final year there. But you're right. I totally forgot about Josh Giddey. I was like, what in the hell? Like, he's played really well too. Man, you're looking at Sacramento. I mean, they just traded away Tyrese Halliburton. I know De'Aaron Fox is there, but there's really no one that's going to trade for Russell Westbrook. And that's the crazy part about him. He's going to demand a trade. No one's really going to trade for him. Again, I think the Lakers might have to package him with somebody to just move off of him and not get anything in return. Like, they'll probably have to move him and give somebody a pick or a player and then say, here, take these two things to give me nothing. Take these two things and money to give me nothing.
Yep, they could send him to the Clippers because the Clippers have Reggie Jackson, and I think Reggie Jackson's a free agent after this year, so he's going to get paid by somebody. But, I mean, I think it's going to come to –
Go for it.
It's going to be a veteran's minimum for him at this point, I think. Yeah. Honestly, I think the Lakers hold on to him. They release him before next season. They take, I think, the $15 or $16 million cap hit, whatever it is. And then I think he signs a veteran's minimum with somebody because it's going to be a Carmelo Anthony situation where he's not going to get any offers that he likes. He's not going to be able to start anywhere unless there's an injury like in the Colin Sexton situation. Yep. So if he wants to play, he's going to have to sign a veteran's minimum deal, get stuck somewhere, wherever that is, and hope that the starting point guard gets hurt so he can step in.
Yeah, and again, I just don't know if Russ wants to be on the bench. Remember when he got pulled from late in the game situations, when we all said, probably shouldn't get pulled from those situations, he was not happy. He said, I think I've earned the right. And I said, what right have you earned, in your 12-year NBA career, has it been? I don't remember how long.
12 or 13, yeah.
12 or 13, right? So he's been in the league for that long. I've never seen him really be a guy I want on the floor in the last couple minutes of a ball game. I'm sorry. During his MVP years, maybe, but only for that team, not for anybody else. And I do want to pose this question to you because he is 33 years old. So he's probably got a couple of more years real productive, right? Because he's a big, fast, athletic guy who's based off speed and power and athleticism. So you probably think until 36 if he plays to LeBron. Do you think it's more likely? So say no one wants to trade for him, he gets cut. Do you think, or they release him? Do you think it's more likely that Russ retires or that Russ would go somewhere on a veteran's minimum?
I think he would go somewhere on a veteran's minimum because even if he comes off the bench, you could essentially get a better version of Rajon Rondo. And if you remember back when Rajon Rondo was in his prime with the Boston Celtics, he was never really a scorer. He would give you like 10 to 12 points per game, around 10 assists, and around 9 to 10 rebounds. So he was giving you a triple-double, but he wasn't scoring like 20 points per game. It was 10, 12 points, same amount of assists, and the same amount of rebounds. He just did what a point guard should do to help your team win.
Yeah.
That's how I can kind of see Russell Westbrook shaping out if he ends up landing in a bench role. I think he could come off the bench and give you 10 to 12 points and still give you close to double-double, triple-double numbers off the bench because he's talented enough to do that. He just doesn't have the mental capacity to realize when he's making stupid mistakes. Yeah. You're a career 26% three-point shooter, which is terrible for a point guard, and you are 0 for 15 in a game shooting threes, but you still continue to shoot threes. Like, at some point, your mental stability should be like, maybe I should stop taking a three-pointer tonight. I am 0 for 15, and I am shooting 26% for my career.
Dude, at 0 for 8, you got to stop. Unless you're Steph Curry, you're Klay Thompson. At 0 for 8? Nah, man. I'm sorry. What are you talking? 0 for 4, you might have to.
I don't know. Do you remember that game?
Yeah.
There was literally like moments in the second half who I forgot who they were playing. I think it was Utah. But there was literally moments in the second half where when Russell Westbrook had the ball beyond the perimeter, all 5 defenders left him wide open because they dared him to shoot it and they didn't care.
Yes. I think it was against this. Oh, man. I think this year he was like 0 for 5 against Sacramento. And I remember that happening again. But, geez, absolutely. They just dare him to shoot. The Lakers, I don't know if you've seen this picture, against Russell in the bubble when he was with Houston, there'd be like 3 guys just backed off of him when he was on the three-point line. I said, shoot the ball. And then they say, oh, do you know who could fix our team? That guy that we play defense like that against, Russell Westbrook.
I mean, opponents shoot 68% off of Russell Westbrook too, which is why Vogel moves him to the bench in the fourth quarter. I mean, yeah, you think you deserve to be on the floor, then how about you not let your opponent shoot almost 70% when you're on the floor?
And if they're shooting 70%, you better be shooting 70%. You know what I mean? Like, at least you got to balance it out. It can't be 70 and 0. Like, that's not how you're going to win basketball games. Again, the only way for me to see Russell Westbrook have like a meaningful contribution to any team is pull a Carmelo Anthony, of where he just kind of reinvents himself. Carmelo, I think some people have forgotten about it. He was out of the league for a little bit. No one really wanted Carmelo. No one really thought he could be a winning player because all he wanted to do was be in the ISO situation, back guys up, and then take a fadeaway 3. Then he learned, I can be a catch and shoot guy. If Russ can say, hey, let me just be a facilitator, lessen the turnovers, and play some defense, now you have a guy that, if he comes off the bench, fits that Rajon Rondo mold, and he's bigger and faster and stronger than Rondo's ever been. But until he does that, he's not a guy that can really contribute to a winning cause.
And I know this would never happen because they have DeJounte Murray as their point guard right now. But the only team that I really think could fix Westbrook is the Spurs because of Popovich.
Right.
And Popovich would not let Westbrook be the player he is because he would get in his face and be like, what the hell are you doing? And why are you doing what you are doing? And he would force Westbrook to change his game. But while the Spurs have a triple-double machine right now in DeJounte Murray, there ain't no chance that Westbrook goes there because Murray's the point guard of the future over there.
And again, Russ is just in a bad spot. You got nobody. You have no one that's really going to want you. OKC is not what it was 2 years ago when you could have gone there and been like, okay, here's my last ride, one last time here. There's just no. And again, because all guys now, they can play point guard. Like, even if you're 6'7", you're still a point guard. So teams have that position in a league, in an era of kind of positionless stuff where you can play on ball, off ball. Russell Westbrook is not anything but that. He is the most I have to be on ball guy I've ever seen. He has to be on the ball all the time for him to be effective, because off the ball, he can't shoot. He can't create his own shot. He can't facilitate without, taking a couple dribbles or taking the entire shot clock. He's just not an asset without the ball in his hands.
The only team realistically that makes sense at this point to take him is Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he might not be the smartest player, he might not be the greatest player, but he's still a good veteran mentor that Cade Cunningham could lean on.
Yeah.
And then basically, once he leaves, you kind of turn the keys over to Cade Cunningham to be that leader.
Yeah, and again, it's just the Lakers are going to have to do their best pitch. They need all the sales teams from everybody to come in here and say, how do we get this thing to work? We got to pour all our resources into that because Damian Lillard is going to be available. You have to go get Damian Lillard. You're going to have to go get guys in free agency. Don't let a DeMar DeRozan thing happen again where you just let him slip and get the wrong guy, right? Russell Westbrook's not getting any better. You're not getting any better with Russell Westbrook. Go and try to fix it. It'll be interesting to see if Russell Westbrook is even tradable because the teams might not even want him. If they have to release him and take on the salary, whatever it does, the Lakers don't want any part of his contract. But, man, they are in a really bad spot here.
Exactly.
And that is going to wrap things up for us today. I want to say thank you to everybody who's tuned in, left comments during the show. It's always been a blast, just like always, Dustin. I know it's been a little bit of time, but I always love talking to Siri, your stat guy, because it always comes in with something interesting, always something good. So, gotta love it. Dustin, thank you so much. Any last words for the people on this brilliant Friday afternoon?
Yeah, March Madness officially kicks off tonight with D3 hoops tonight. So now I guess you can say it officially is the beginning of the greatest month in sports.
There we go. The greatest month in sports indeed. It's been Aaman Patel and Dustin Rees here with ASAP Recap. And until next time, we'll see y'all later.
All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.